Akshata, Young India Talk Series organized by YOGI Youth Organization for Green India आज के सत्र में आप सभी का तहे दिल से स्वागत करती हूँ। जैसा कि हम सभी जानते हैं, महात्मा गांधी जी का जन्म एक सामान्य परिवार में हुआ। उन्होंने अपने असाधारण कार्यों एवं अहिंसा वाले विचारों से पूरे विश्व की सोच बदल दी। आजादी एवं शांति की स्थापना ही उनके जीवन का एकमात्र लक्ष्य था। गांधी जी द्वारा स्वतंत्रता और शांति के लिए शुरू की गई इस लड़ाई ने भारत और दक्षिण अफ्रीका में कई ऐतिहासिक आंदोलनों को एक नई दिशा प्रदान की। और आज हमारे वक्ता अरुण जी गांधी मोहनदास करमचंद गांधी के पांचवे पोते। वे आज हमारे युवा दोस्तों के साथ लिगेसी ऑफ लव इस विषय पर बात करने जा रहे हैं, जिस विषय में हम सभी को गहरी दिलचस्पी होनी चाहिए। उनका जन्म 1934 में दक्षिण अफ्रीका के डरबन शहर में। उनका बचपन अपने दादाजी के साथ दक्षिण अफ्रीका के भेदभावपूर्ण रंगभेद कानूनों के तहत गुजरा। उन्हें गंभीर भेदभाव का सामना करना पड़ा और एक परिणाम के रूप में उन्होंने न्याय की मांग की। पर अपने माता पिता और दादाजी से सीखे न्याय का मतलब प्रतिशोध नहीं, न्याय वो है जो अहिंसा और सत्य के मार्ग से समाज में परिवर्तन लाता है। अरुण जी ने इस पाठों को दुनिया भर में प्रसारित किया। पिछले 5 वर्षों से उन्होंने राष्ट्रपति क्लिंटन और अन्य सम्मानित लोगों के साथ पुनर्जागरण सप्ताहांत विचार विमर्श रोड्स विद्वान में भी भाग लिया। हाल ही के वर्षों में उनकी व्यवस्थाओं में शिकागो चिल्ड्रन एंड आर्बन मिशिगन में संग्रहालय और महिला न्याय केंद्र में बोलना शामिल। उन्होंने यह दुनिया भर के विभिन्न सामाजिक कार्यक्रमों में भी अपना योगदान दिया। उन्होंने कई किताबें भी लिखी, जैसे महात्मा गांधी और उनकी पत्नी कस्तूरबा की अनकही कहानियां, बेस्ट सेलर लिगेसी ऑफ लव, अहिंसा के मार्ग में मेरी शिक्षा, में उन्होंने सबको अहिंसा, प्रेम और सत्य के मार्ग पर चलने के लिए प्रेरित किया। हमें खुशी है कि आज हमारे इस कार्यक्रम में आप अतिथि स्वरूप आए। सर, आई वार्मली वेलकम यू। अब मैं आपसे अनुरोध करती हूँ कि आप आपके विचार हम सभी के साथ साझा करें। अरुण जी।
Yeah, it's very nice to be with all of you today. I'm sorry I cannot speak to you in Hindi or Marathi, but I will try to explain my thoughts in English. I lived with Bapuji for 2 years between the age of 12 and 14. And the legacy I got from him was a legacy of love. Many people think of Bapuji as a very stern, very strict person who was always very adamant about all his desires. But I found him to be extremely loving and nice and very, very humorous. He had a great sense of humor. There are some people, he started the ashram, Sevagram Ashram and Sabarmati Ashram, to train people in nonviolence, to understand what he meant by nonviolence, and work with it and practice it in their life. But unfortunately, I think that people have really misunderstood him and not practice. They do not practice his philosophy as it should be. His philosophy of nonviolence is not simply about ending wars or about conflict resolution. His philosophy of nonviolence is about personal transformation. He felt that if we don't transform ourselves, don't change our attitudes and negative behaviors, we will never be able to practice nonviolence. And when I was with him, he taught me that violence appears in different forms, in different ways. Um, it's not just the physical violence, not just the fighting and the wars that we should be concerned about, but all the other forms of violence that we practice every day. It has become so much a part of our life, a part of our nature, that sometimes we don't even think of it and practice it mindlessly. He made me draw a genealogical tree of violence, just as we do a family tree with violence as the grandparent and physical violence and passive violence as the two branches. And every day before I went to bed, I had to analyze and examine everything that I had experienced during the day. Things that I may have done to other people, or people may have done to me, or things that I may have seen or read about. Anything pertinent had to be examined and analyzed and put in their appropriate places on that tree. If it was the kind of violence where physical force is used, fighting and kicking and beating and all of these things where we use physical force against people, that would go under physical violence. But there are many kinds of violence that we practice where we don't use any physical force, and yet we hurt people, like all the hate and the prejudice and the discrimination and oppression and economic disparities and um, being selfish and greedy. And today's lifestyle, we are taught that we have to think about ourselves, we have to become successful in life, get to the top, don't care about anybody else, just think about yourself. And that is a very selfish attitude. We then think that we can, as we grab as much as of the resources as we can for ourselves, and we don't think about other people. And that kind of what he called passive violence. He made me realize that by making me do this introspection. It is something that all of us need to do because all of us are victims of that kind of lifestyle where we have been taught all these negative things. And we have to overcome many of those things. Uh, and when I started doing this introspection, I was amazed that within a few years, I was able to fill up the whole wall in my room with acts of passive violence. The physical violence didn't grow very much. Because there's a limit to what you can do, physical fighting. But the passive violence grew endlessly. And that is when I realized how much passive violence each one of us commit every day. And that he then explained to me that passive violence that we commit all the time, every day, generates anger in the victim. And the victim then resorts to physical violence to get justice. And we see that today, every day in our lives. We see crime increasing, people committing more crime, not because they were born criminals, but because of the problems that they suffer in society where they can't get their basic needs. And when they can't get it legitimately, they resort to violence and bad ways of getting it. So it's passive violence that fuels the fire of physical violence. So logically, if we want to put out that fire of physical violence, we have to cut off the fuel supply. And since the fuel supply comes from each one of us, we have to become the change we wish to see in the world. If we don't change our attitudes and our behavior and our thinking, we will never be able to create that kind of atmosphere of harmony. So these ashrams that he created were places where he was trying to teach people this kind of life, where we need to be all as one family. We have to look at everybody as part of our family and treat everybody as brothers and sisters, and have respect. Today, he used to emphasize relationship building. Today, our relationships we build on the basis of self-interest. We are always thinking of what am I going to gain from this relationship? And if I don't gain anything from the relationship, why should I waste my time building it? He said that we should not build relationships on the basis of selfish interests. That is violence. But in non-violence, relationships are built on the four principles of love, respect, understanding, and acceptance. If we love each other and respect each other, then we have a family tie with them. And with that respect and love for each other, we feel their pain, and we are willing to do something to help them overcome that. Just like all of you, I understand, felt the pain of the poor people, the Adivasi people, and you dedicated your lives to bringing some uh, some kind of comfort to them. It's a very good thing. It is what Bapuji wanted all of us to do. But he emphasized humility as a very important aspect of public service. And sometimes I have found that we don't have that humility. We have more arrogance. It's not arrogance like, we go and like Hitler's arrogance, but arrogance in different ways. Like, for instance, we can go out to the Adivasis and we say, we know what your problem is, you listen to us and everything will be all right. We don't know their problem. We have never lived in those circumstances. We don't know what it means to live without all of these basic amenities. So we don't know the problem. What we need to do is to have the humility to sit with them and talk to them and listen to them and find out what are their hopes and aspirations. What do they expect? How do they expect to gain it? And how can we help in bringing this about? I want to share with you a story that happened in 1942 when Bapuji called on the young people to join the Quit India movement. He said, suspend your education for a little while until India becomes independent and join the struggle and help free India. And many thousands of people, young people, joined. Bapuji was also very astute in judging people's strengths and character. And he realized that not everybody has the capacity to sacrifice, going to prisons and being beaten up and that kind of thing. So he used those people for social work to help elevate the poverty that existed in India. So there was this one man who came from somewhere in South India, and he told Bapuji, I've stopped my university education. I'm joining your struggle. Tell me what to do, and I will go and do it. So Bapuji realized that he didn't have the strength to go and sacrifice and suffer imprisonment and all that. So he told him, I want you to go out in your state and find the poorest village and help those people come out of poverty. So he went and he looked around for a village and he found a Harijan village, very poor and very, because of the poverty, they were living in dirt and filth, and so he wouldn't go anywhere near the village because he was a Brahmin and he um, felt uh, that the place was too dirty for him to step in. So he found a nice tree a little distance away from the village, and he would go and sit there every morning and invite the village people to come there, and he would talk to them about hygiene and cleanliness and all of those things. And the village people, because he came from Bapuji, they respected him and they came and listened to him, but it didn't make any difference in their life. They just continued to live as they were living. So after a few months, when this young man realized that all his talk to these people didn't have any effect, he got disheartened and he went and told Bapuji, he said, these people are impossible. You can't change them. They won't listen to you. So Bapuji asked him, tell me about it. What did you think? What did you see there? And he told him that there was a lot of poverty and dirty and the people didn't have a bath and so on. So Bapuji asked him, did you see whether they have water supply? Do they have any water availability of water there? No, he didn't see that. So, he asked him all these questions, and when this man said no, he had not looked into this at all, then Bapuji said, how do you expect them to listen to you? You tell them to go and have a bath once a day, but they don't have any water. Where are they going to go and have a bath? So this was an example of the arrogance of this one man who came from a higher society, and he thought he knew the lesson, the problems, and he could resolve the problems. But he couldn't, because that's not how you do it. You have to have the humility to go and look at it, go and see there, talk to them, find out what are their deficiencies, and then see how best we can provide them with those things. So that is the kind of humility that Bapuji expected from all uh, people who want to do public service. But the gist of all his philosophy was about personal transformation. He said you can learn and get degrees from colleges and universities, but none of that is going to teach you the basic needs that you have to have in relationship with people. And we see this today in that a lot of the uh, college graduates with PhDs and so on, they are very good in the subject they have learned from the textbooks, but they are absolutely zero in their relationships with people. They are not able to build good relationships. They have no, because they come from that arrogance. They're, PhD, I am a PhD, listen to me. And that arrogance doesn't take you anywhere. There's another story of arrogance that I want to share with you. And this was told to me by Sriman Narayan, who was once the governor of Gujarat. And he came from a very affluent family. He was sent in the 1930s. He went to London for his postgraduate studies. He studied economics at the London School of Economics, got a PhD, came back to India, and he had this very arrogant feeling. He said, I'm going to change India. I got a degree from London School of Economics, and I'm going to change India. So he told his parents, he says, I am now ready. I'm going to go out and change the economy of the country. And his parents were very devoted to Bapuji. So they said, well, before you do anything, you got to go and get blessings from Bapuji. After that, you can do whatever you like. And so he came to Sevagram Ashram and told Bapuji the same thing. I've got this PhD, I'm going to change India, give me your blessings, and I'm going to go and do it. And Bapuji listened to him patiently, and then he told him, he said, you can't get my blessings so easily. You have to work for it. And he said, all right, what do you want me to do? So Bapuji told him, from tomorrow you are going to clean the toilets. Join the group that cleaned the toilets. And those were old type of toilets, bucket toilets. You have to carry those buckets from the toilet and take it out into the field and empty it and clean it and put it back for use. It was the kind of work that Harijan people did in those days. And he was aghast. He says, I'm a doctorate from London School of Economics and you want me to clean toilets? And Bapuji said, yes. When you show me that you can clean toilets with the same enthusiasm as you want to change the economy of the country, then I give you my blessings. For many weeks, he had to do every morning and afternoon clean toilets. And then he realized what Bapuji was trying to instill in him, the humility, not to walk 6 inches above ground, but come down to earth and see the reality and have the humility to be one with all the people. And when he achieved that humility, Bapuji gave him the blessings to go and do whatever he wanted to. So humility played a very important role in Bapuji's philosophy. And he said, that the education you get in schools and colleges is one part of life. But education is not something that begins and ends with school. It's a lifelong experience. You are educating yourself every day, every moment of every day, through every person you meet, and interact with. All of that is part of education, but only if you have an open mind. We have this feeling that once we get out of school and got our graduate degree and all that, our education has stopped. So we close our minds. We're not anymore willing to receive any kind of education from outside. Our mind is closed to that extent. And then we go on and we remain in that kind of little cesspool that we have created and continue to wallow in that. But if we have an open mind, his famous quotation was that your room should be like, your mind should be like a room with open windows. Let the breeze flow in from all the windows, but refuse to be blown away by any one of them. So if we have a mind that is open and we allow all the thoughts from different places to come in and educate us, we take what is good from there and reject what is bad. And that is how we grow. That is how we become better and better. Another thing that he made us do every day was every morning when we got up, we had to tell ourselves, we are going to be a better person today than we were yesterday. And then we had to work towards becoming better. And to do that, we had to create a list of all the things that we considered to be weaknesses in us. And we all have weaknesses. There's nothing to be ashamed of that. We have weaknesses because we have not dealt with trying to eliminate them. We just live with them. We hear people talk, this is who I am, take it or leave it kind of thing. Nobody is who they are. We are what we make ourselves to be. And we can make ourselves better by making a list of all those weaknesses and transforming those weaknesses into strengths. That is what Bapuji and all the great people whom we admire today, they all did the same thing. If you look at Bapuji's life, he began to the same kind of weaknesses that all of us have. He lied to his parents, he stole money from home. He even went to prostitutes, and all of those weaknesses he had. But when he realized that he didn't want those weaknesses to define his life, he said, I've got to overcome these weaknesses. And he began to change and make those weaknesses into strengths. And that's how he became a Mahatma. So we may not become Mahatmas, but we can certainly become better people than we started out. And that has to be a continuous effort throughout life to be better and better and transform our weaknesses into strengths. Anger played a very important role in his philosophy because he felt that anger was the main issue that ignited violence in human beings. And we see that happening in our personal lives as well as in the lives of nations, that we get angry and we immediately react with violence. We blow up and say things and do things that changes the course of our lives completely. I don't know if any of you have had the occasion to go and visit the people in prisons who have committed some kind of crime and have been put in prison. But I have been doing a lot of work in the prisons here in New York State. And I am amazed at how many young, wonderful lives, young people with potential for a great, future. In a moment of madness, they did something that changed their lives completely, and then they find themselves in prison. And all of that because anger is something that flares up in us every day. because somebody instigates us or somebody does something and we react to it. And Bapuji said that anger is like electricity. It is just as powerful and just as useful, but only if we use it intelligently. But it can be just as deadly and destructive if we abuse it. So just as we use electrical energy and bring it into our lives and use it for the good of humanity, we must learn to use anger in the same way intelligently so that we can use that energy for the good of humanity rather than abuse it and cause death and destruction. And he said that, to be able to control the anger and to stop yourself from doing something that you regret, there are two things that we need to do. One is we've got to develop a strong mind so that we don't react immediately. We react in a flash when somebody provokes us. We don't need to do that. We need to stop and think and find a better solution to it. So in order to have that stronger mind, we need to do some meditation. Not the kind of yogic meditation, but he taught me a very simple kind of meditation where I had to sit in a room quietly for a few minutes, no disturbances from outside. Keep in front of me something that gives me pleasure to look at. It could be a photograph or it could be a flower or something. And then concentrate for one full minute on that object. Put entire concentration on that object. And then close my eyes and see how long I can keep that image in my mind's eye. In the beginning, you'll find that the moment you close your eyes, the image is vanished because we haven't trained our mind to hold that image. And so if you do this kind of meditation every day for a few minutes, you will find that you can slowly keep that image longer and longer in your mind. And to that extent, your mind is coming under your control and you're able to stop it from wandering. It helps in every way, not just in cases of anger, but even in concentrating on your work or your education. Very often we find that when we are sitting listening to a lecture, our mind is wandering in different directions. We are thinking about what we are going to eat tonight or what we are going to cook tomorrow and what movie we are going to go to. So it's wandering in different directions. To that extent, your mind is not fully involved in that moment. And so you have no control over it. But when you learn this exercise, you will find that you are able to concentrate your attention to what is happening right now and put 100% of your concentration there. And you'll be able to learn faster. You'll be able to do things faster because you're fully concentrated. So that was one thing. The second thing that he made me do was to write an anger journal. He said every time you get angry, unless it is something simple that you can immediately think about and find a solution, but very often we find a situation where we are not able to find an immediate solution, and we need to find time and to work out the solution to the problem. So in such cases, he asked me to write a journal. but write the journal with the intention of finding a solution to the problem, and not simply to get this anger out of your system. Today, a lot of psychiatrists have been advising people to get the anger out of your system. You go and shout in the woods, in nature, get it out of your system. Go and punch pillows and get it out of your system. Or just write an anger journal, pour your anger out into the journal and get it out. In whatever way, just get it out of your system. That doesn't help. But for that moment, you get it out of your system and you feel nice about it, but you go back and you face the situation and you are again faced with the same problem, and it just keeps revolving. And then at some time, you're going to say, this nonviolence doesn't work. Let me fight it out. And that's where, we end up. And but if you write the journal with the intention of finding a solution, your mind is already focused on finding a solution. And then you find a solution that is acceptable to you and the other parties, and you can work it out and talk it over and resolve the issue and put it behind you. So these are important things for us to understand and learn and practice every day. So nonviolence, like I said, is not about just conflict resolution or protesting out in the streets because of some political reason. It's a way of life. We have to live it. We have to practice it. We have to learn to create harmony in society, because peace is not the absence of war. Just because we are not at war with any other nation, or we don't have people fighting in our streets, in our neighborhood, it doesn't mean that we are living in peace. We can only live in peace when we create harmony in society, where everybody has a reasonably good way of life and have all the basic needs of their life met. And that kind of harmony can be created only when we look at the entire human race as one family, and everybody is part of the family. Today, nations all over the world, they don't have that concept. It's all about, what we need in our nation, and that is top priority. We don't care what happens to any other nation. If it means that because we like the United States has a lot of money, they can go and buy anything from any part of the world, pay top dollars for it, and get it because they need it. They don't care about the cost of the environment in that country, or the ecology or whatever. None of that matters to them. So the foreign policy of every nation in the world today is based on what is good for us, not what is good for the world. And so we have that selfish attitude, and every nation is exploiting every other nation uh, to get what they want, just as we have been taught to exploit each other. We are constantly exploiting each other for what we want. Uh, whether it's higher salary or better working conditions, or whatever it is, we are constantly exploiting. So that kind of exploitation is creating more violence, and it's a kind of passive violence. which goes against creating harmony. So Bapuji had wanted um, not only harmony in India, but harmony all over the world. And he realized the interconnectedness of all of people, the interconnectedness of all the countries of the world. We are not independent individuals. We are all interconnected and interrelated. And so we have to learn to live that way, learn to think about the needs of other people and what can we do to help other people enjoy a reasonably good way of life. So these were some of his thoughts and his hopes and aspirations. But as you can see from things that are happening in India, things that are happening all over the world, we are far, far removed from his dream. We That doesn't mean that it can't be created. It just means that we have to think of an alternate way of life than just materialism. Today we are thinking only in material terms, how to make more money and how to exploit resources and exploit people so that we become affluent. And that should not be the case. He wasn't against capitalism. He was against capitalists because he said capitalists have become greedy, and what we have today is greedy capitalism. What he wanted was compassionate capitalism. So, like people who have the ability to make money without exploiting people, make money and share that money with other people and make their lives better. There is no point in one person making billions of dollars when he's exploiting 1,000 people to achieve that goal. And so it should be, the idea is not about making money, but the idea is about how do we create harmony and peace in the world and share uh, our resources and our abilities. And that's where his philosophy, part of his philosophy of nonviolence, had the concept of trusteeship. I don't know if you have heard of the concept of trusteeship, but it was a very important part of his philosophy. He said that every one of us has a talent that we have acquired either through inheritance or through education or just lucky. But we think that we own the talent and therefore we exploit that talent for our own personal gains. And Bapuji said we don't own the talent. We are trustees of the talent. So as trustees of the talent, we should be willing to use the talent for other people as much as we use it for ourselves and help other people uh, achieve a better life. Now, helping other people achieve a better life today has taken the form of charity. And we see, even when we go out into the streets and we see some beggars sitting there, we just put our hands in the pocket and take out a few coins and we drop it into their box. Now that is not compassion. That is making them more and more dependent on us to give them the charity to live. What we need to do is to get involved to find out why is this person incapable of taking care of himself or herself, and what kind of strengths does this person have that can be used to make that person stand up on his own feet and achieve things for himself or herself, and then help them achieve that uh, ability. That would be working out of compassion instead of out of pity. So the charity that we do today is motivated by pity. What we need to do is charity out of compassion. So I think I've shared quite a bit of what I understand of Bapuji's philosophy.
Thank you, Arunji. We are glad to have you here, and thank you so much for taking time to guide us. Thank you to all the listeners as well. See you tomorrow for our next session at 5 p.m. Thank you.